One JLB. I bet you're probably wondering what I'm doing with my Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 hat on. And you probably noticed the Super Mario World shirt that I have on. Well, to quote something that the late great former Nintendo president Satoru Iwata once said, "In my heart, I am a gamer." Well, that actually speaks true for many of us, myself included. Now, I've been playing video games since I knew how to walk, and all the way up until today. Learned how to walk, learned how to talk, learned how to eat, learned how to breathe, learned how to play video games. And learned to love cartoons on the side, but I digress. Anyway, with the enchantingly exciting news that E3 is coming back for this year, after it was cancelled last year, I decided, after looking at Obi-Wan Play's reaction to E3 2010 and Scott the Woz doing talks about E3s of the past, and definitely check those guys out. Scott the Woz and Obi-Wan Plays. They're real great guys when it comes to gaming. Anyway, I decided, why not do something like that? But then throw in a little something that Far From Subtle did with the E3 2013 with a whole bunch of pre-show stuff. Specifically something from E3 1996. And definitely go subscribe to them. Far From Subtle, they do playthroughs, they do reactions to movie trailers and video game trailers. Yeah. And the name of the channel, it definitely shows who they are. But anyway, I have decided to follow in their footsteps, all of their footsteps, and do reactions to all the video game stuff. Specifically, the Consumer Electronics Show and E3. Actually, I'm not really going to be doing any shows specifically to Japan, simply because I don't speak Japanese. I only know one or two characters, such as konnichiwa, which means hello, sayonara, which means goodbye, and tokuso, which means creating something unique. Learned that one from Mr. Iwata. Mr. Iwata. Anyway, with all that being said and done, this is the hype train, my hype train, to E3 2021. I'm going to be doing reactions to a whole bunch of E3 and CES stuff, past and present. I'm combining CES with E3 because CES was basically E3 before there was an E3. Because video games were often shown at the Consumer Electronics Show. So without further ado, let's get this show going. And we'll start with 1983 CES. I don't know if it's the Winter Consumer Electronics Show or the Summer Consumer Electronics Show, but I digress. First stop on our 1983 CES tour is the Magnavox Odyssey Command Center. It was previously going to be known as the Magnavox Odyssey 3, following in the footsteps of Magnavox's very first video game console, and the very first video game console ever released, the Magnavox Odyssey, created by Ralph Baer. And it was supposed to follow up on the Magnavox Odyssey 2, which was supposed to be a competitor to the Atari 2600 and any other cartridge-based video games that were around in the late 70s, early 80s. But anyway, let's get down to it.
Odyssey is about to change the name of the game. Witness the launch of the Odyssey Command Center.
And keep in mind, 83 was the year of the great video game crash, so keep that in mind in the context. Pretty slick looking.
Precision keyboard. With fingertip command over all keyboard functions for increased play value and computer and terminal expansion. Hand controls contoured to fit comfortably in the palm of the hand. Hand controls that store
Are these supposed to be wireless?
but never far away.
And a built-in keyboard?
Command Center. It's a whole new game with high-resolution graphics that fill the screen with a blaze of colorful action.
Yeah, sure, the graphics of the old systems like the Atari 2600 and the Magnavox Odyssey 2, they look rather chunky today, but back in the old days, back in the 1980s, this was the best graphics that you could get for a video game system. Now, obviously, today we have high-definition graphics with the PS5, Xbox Series X, Nintendo Switch. You get the idea. But if I were a guy in 1980s America, and I were at the CES, and I were looking at this promo for the Odyssey Command Center, and I actually had a friend or maybe a son or nephew who had a Magnavox Odyssey 2, I thought, that looks pretty interesting. Pretty realistic.
The forbidden dimension of Spirus the Deathless, Time Lord of Chaos, as awesome armadas pursuing through a newly created time warp in eternity.
Oh yeah, that's right. The Odyssey was also meant to compete with the Intellivision and the ColecoVision. Intellivision created by Mattel, and the ColecoVision made by a leather company called Coleco. Oh yeah, those controllers are wireless. Huh. Oh yeah, Pickaxe Pete. That game was actually on the Magnavox Odyssey 2. So Magnavox planned to port that over to the Command Center. Oh, so they were supposed to create a second follow-up to their voice module, the Voice. Actually, the Voice was one of two peripherals that came out for different video game systems. Mattel had one called the IntelliVoice for the Intellivision, and Odyssey had the Voice. So I think this was supposed to be the Voice Mark II for the Command Center. But unfortunately, due to the video game crash, they never came out.
Game cartridges work in the Command Center. Many Command Center series games will work with existing Odyssey 2 main.
Oh, so the games are backwards compatible. Pretty cool. Backwards compatibility in the 80s.
A masterful marketing stroke of far-reaching and profitable proportions. Dock the Odyssey Command Center modem into the expansion port.
Oh yeah, they were trying to do online gaming back in those days. The early form of online gaming, something some of us take for granted today, but this was a brand new technology back in the 80s. I mean, now obviously I wasn't born in the 80s, but you get the gist.
System is a computer programming module that expands the uses of the standing keyboard.
Computer programming? They were really trying to build the Odyssey Command Center as a computer rather than just a game console.
Watch for the intercontinental launch of the Odyssey Command Center to be seen and heard in the news around the world as no other Odyssey product introduction before it. Roger, Command Center. Command Center, you are go for staging. Command Center, looking good. From Odyssey, the Command Center. Now, it's a whole new game.
Yeah. Too bad it never came out. Well, definitely stay tuned for CES 1983 Reactions Part 2, because we're going to be going from Magnavox to Atari. Hope to see you all there. Till then, take care.